Hello Huskies, welcome to the vocabulary review assignment. I am not going to go over the classwork. We did a scavenger hunt in class, and so if you are missing that classwork, then instead of writing down what we all did in class, you can just make up examples to fit all of those blanks on the back of your classwork. And hopefully after watching this brief video, you will know what all of the questions mean, what they're asking for. So then you can just make up your own and fill in those blanks. So what we're going to do is I just have copied all the expressions from the top of the page on your homework. This is from the vocabulary review assignment. And I'm just going to go through and kind of talk about each one. So number 1 says an equation with a term whose exponent is 7. So first of all, equations have equal signs. So you're only going to look at the ones on here that have an equal sign, and we're looking for a term whose exponent is 7. An exponent is the tiny little number in the corner that represents repeated multiplication. So here's an exponent of 7, and here's also an exponent of 7, but that first one that we looked at is actually not an equation. This is just an expression. And so the only equation we have whose with a term whose exponent is 7 is this one right here. And let me see if I can make my not sure why my pen is writing so fat, but this is number 1 right here. Number 1. Okay, then you have number 2 says an equation with a term whose coefficient is 7. Whose coefficient is 7. A coefficient is the number being multiplied by a variable. And it's an equation, so we're looking for an equal sign. And so here we have an equation. And let's see, here's another equation, but I don't see any coefficients of 7 in that one. This is an equation, but it has a constant of 7. A constant is a number without a variable. So it's not that one. And so it's actually this first one that we looked at. This is an equation, and the coefficient is the number in front of the variable, and that's 7. So this is number 2 underneath it. Okay, number 3, an expression with a constant term of 7. So we saw an equation with a constant term of 7, but this one is an expression with a constant term of 7. So this is number 3 right here. And you can copy those down. You don't need to wait for me to write all these down. That's why we're doing it this way. Number 4, an expression with 7 terms. A term is something that's separated by a plus or a minus sign. And if it's in an equation, the equal sign counts also to separate them. So we're looking for something that has 7 terms separated by a plus or a minus sign. If you look at this, this has 7 different, 1, F, E, D, C, B, A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 4 makes 7 things in there, but those aren't terms. Those are all being multiplied together. This one is number 4. It has 7 terms. There's a term, 2 terms, 3 terms, 4, 5, 6, and 7 terms. Those are 7. That is an expression with 7 terms. Now, on number 5, your paper might look slightly different than mine because I made a tiny little mistake. Number 5 is a trinomial with a constant that is negative, and yours might have a plus sign. I'm just going to go ahead and point it out right here. Down here in the corner, yours might say plus 2, or maybe somebody's written in plus a negative 2, and I went ahead and changed it. This is supposed to be the trinomial with a constant that is negative. So this is a negative 2. The constant is the one without a variable. And so this is the answer to number 5, and you can go ahead and change yours to say minus 2 if you want. Number 6, a binomial with a constant that is negative. What's a binomial? A binomial has 2 terms. So we're just looking for something with 2 terms, and this first equation, it has an equation, and on the right hand side there are 2 terms, but it doesn't have a negative constant. Let's see, where else is, oh, this is the only binomial that I see that's not in an equation. And it does have a constant that is negative because the 2 is negative again. So that is the answer to number 6. Okay, number 7 is a monomial. A monomial is just one term. Everything is being multiplied together. And that we've already kind of talked about how all of those are being multiplied together. That's a monomial. All right, number 8 is a linear equation. I hope you remember from 8th grade, y equals mx plus b. Probably talked about it a lot. This is a linear equation. We talked about how m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Remember all of that? Well, this is a general linear equation, but obviously none of the questions, none of the expressions up there say y equals mx plus b. So you need to look for one that has numbers in the place of m and b. And in our case, that happens to be the very first one. So the answer to a linear equation number 8 is the very first one. That equation is linear. 32 would be the slope, and b, the y-intercept, is 1/2. Okay, a proportion is when you have two fractions equal to each other. That makes this one number 9. That's what a proportion looks like. Number 10 is an equation with only variables, no constants. A variable is a letter. So technically, I guess this one's not quite right because pi, although it is a letter, it is kind of constant. It does not change. But you can copy this one down, pi r squared h, because it doesn't have any other numbers, but technically pi is actually a constant. It's just, it represents that number, 3.14. So I kind of want to change that one in the future. That's not really an equation with only variables. Number 11, though, is an equation with only constants and no variables. So where on here is one that doesn't have any letters at all? Oh, it's the upper right-hand corner. So this one is number 11. And down here, this was number 10. Okay, then the last one says, write a sentence describing my policy on test corrections. To do that, you need to go to my website and click on the 9th grade class if you're in 9th grade and read through the disclosure document. You can find it in the My Documents section. And then under My Bookmarks, there's a little form to click on so that you can sign that. So go ahead and do that, and then you can write a sentence explaining what we do about test corrections in my class. And that'll be worth 4 points, and you can finish all the other scavenger hunt on the front. And good luck with the rest of your homework.